Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started here, I think. My name is Edward Watson. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager at Veeam, and today I will be joined by Karinne Bessette, who is a technologist on the product strategy team. She'll also be doing a demo of the solution, so we'll definitely look forward to getting hands-on and getting an overview of this solution later on in this presentation. So first, before we kick off this presentation, before we kick off really and go into the different facts that we have for you today, I think the first, really one of the most important things to acknowledge about Microsoft Teams is really the sheer amount of growth that we've seen really over the past year and a half, actually, and really a lot of that was obviously driven by the pandemic, and really just from that early beginning of last year, you can really see we've really seen a huge amount of growth in the amount of users, and 9 times out of 10, many of us have really deployed Teams in the past year. So, going from doubling to tripling the user count over the past year and a half, I think that's something we really have to acknowledge, is that Microsoft Teams is really the center of our productivity universe right now, and really the foreseeable future. The other thing I'd like to mention before we kick off is really that bad things can and will happen, right? So whether it's an IT contractor who was actually sentenced to 2 years in prison and ordered to pay $500,000 in restitution to cover damages he caused by deleting the majority of a company's Microsoft Office 365 user accounts, or whether it's simply that we see that malicious PowerShell use and attacks in Office 365 accounts have essentially surged in Q4 of last year, or whether it's that we've been seeing an increase in malicious bugs, deleting Microsoft Teams and SharePoint files. These are all things that we've seen that are obviously negative things that can impact us, and of course we see that there is an increase as well of different tactics to target our users. So in this case, we've seen that in the news there was essentially a recent article where SharePoint servers were being picked at with high-risk, legitimate-looking branded phishing emails, phishing messages, and essentially preyed on by a ransomware gang. So these are all issues that again can and will happen, and I see that Karinne has joined, so welcome, Karinne. We're going ahead and getting kicked off early here. Moving on to the first fact, which is essentially that there are, in fact, 7 reasons you need to back up O365 data. The first is accidental deletion or user error. There is another common one, which is essentially not thinking something's protected when it's not, in the case of retention policy confusion and gaps. There can even be things like internal security threats. We just saw in the previous example, there was a consultant that was disgruntled and decided to start deleting Office 365 accounts because they were mad about that. So that can definitely happen. External security threats, ransomware, rogue apps, we always hear those are definitely top of mind whenever we think about various vulnerabilities. And then, of course, legal and compliance requirements, which I know many of us have to meet legal and compliance requirements, but maybe we don't have the recoverability and the ease of search necessary to meet those legal and compliance requirements in a timely manner. Just a quick reminder for those that aren't on mute, if you could please go on mute. I hear just a little bit of background noise, so I appreciate if everyone goes on mute. And of course, all of these reasons are compounded by the fact that we're really moving to those hybrid deployment models. So definitely adds to the complexity where a backup might be needed, and really what we're focusing on today, which is all around the Teams data structure. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper on how that looks on the back end, and really how that necessitates really a strong reason for backup. And these really are concerns for IT admins, for your organizations. So we took a survey here and we asked that question: what are your primary reasons for protecting O365 data? We interviewed SaaS admins, we interviewed backup admins, and of course you can see that a lot of these risks that we've already covered are definitely top of mind for organizations. And what's interesting is that the backup admins actually seem to understand this in some cases more than the SaaS admins in terms of, the different vulnerabilities. But you can see that accidental deletion, top of the list, ransomware made it high on the list, restoration capabilities, of course, and compliance, all definitely top of mind when it comes to some of those concerns of Office 365 data. Part two is that Office 365 is actually a shared responsibility. So many of you may have seen the Microsoft shared responsibility model before, but essentially this is something that Microsoft provides to help us as the users understand where our responsibility falls. So up top, we're going to build out Microsoft's responsibility, which is the uptime of the cloud service. Your responsibility is essentially the data. So having access and control of that data residing within the cloud service. How do we deliver upon these responsibilities? Well, for Microsoft, it's obviously that data center to data center geo-redundancy. It's having things like the recycle bin, which offer limited short-term recovery needs. On your side, your responsibility, and Microsoft's very clear about this, is it's the data. So having a copy of that data stored in a different location that you can recover from in a very quick manner is essentially all your responsibility. Having full data retention, whether it be short-term or long-term retention needs, and filling essentially any and all policy and gaps. Security is top of mind as well for many organizations. So definitely the infrastructure level is all taken care of by Microsoft. And the data level, of course, is all about your responsibility. So mitigating some of those risks that we've talked about, the accidental deletions, the malicious insiders, your responsibility is your own internal data level security needs. Of course, on the regulatory side, Microsoft takes on the role as the data processor. They do not want to take on the role as the data owner. So they're very clear about this, and you as the data owner, you answer to your own internal corporate industry regulations. You answer to your own internal legal and compliance officers, right? So you can clearly see there's definitely a line in the sand in terms of these responsibilities. Now that we understand that, let's move on to fact number 3, which is that Teams is not a self-contained application. Would you like to take us through this fact number 3, Karinne?
Sure. So, hi, I made it. Teams is not a self-contained application, and that's one of the biggest misconceptions of this product altogether. Is it's actually an abstraction layer of all of these other applications that we work with on a daily basis, from Exchange, SharePoint, and OneDrive, and even like Microsoft Streams and a lot of these other collaborative platforms, to bring them to the forefront so you have an easy way to communicate from user to user. I think it's a build out now. Click. Go ahead and just build this one out for me. So as we can see, there's various items that are handled by these different entities, and that's what brings us to the next fact. Is there's actually a legacy way that everyone was backing up Microsoft Teams to begin with, which was gathering the Exchange chat data, getting the SharePoint online collaborative site data, and going to OneDrive for Business, where those files have been transferred between employees. Now, more recently, Microsoft has opened up a new API. This API allows us to tap into not just the backend data entities for these applications, but include the metadata for things like settings, members, and all of that structure that you need to be able to restore any type of content back to its original location. Now, what this means is, well, we actually teased this back in November. We were working on this, and this was released in our version 5 product. It was officially released December 6th, if I'm not mistaken, Edward?
Yes, that's right. Version 5 was available at that date, yes.
Yes, and this has allowed us to get a more efficient restore process. Now, I think the next slide we have here is going to cover what some of those restore processes are, and you can take off, Edward.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Karinne mentioned, prior to having these Microsoft APIs, it was pretty manual process for backing up Microsoft Teams. And so what Veeam did, and really what few backup vendors have actually done, is really jump on these APIs, which again allows us to back up the metadata from the source for easier recovery. So essentially now the data knows where it's supposed to live. There's no manual recovery efforts where you're trying to hunt down and find the original location where that data is supposed to live. Because the metadata was backed up from the source side, those recoveries are extremely efficient because they know exactly where they're supposed to belong and they recover directly back into place. With Microsoft Teams APIs, we're also allowed to back up Teams objects, channels, settings, tabs. Again, we're able to back up Teams the way your business requires, the way that it's really supposed to be backed up. We're not just backing up Teams from the sources, we're backing up Teams components and essentially the team structure, the way it's supposed to be backed up. And of course, we've got a variety of different storage options that you can choose from as well. So Karinne's going to go into a few of those later on. Of course, hyperscale service providers are very helpful storage options. Fact number 7, and some of these might seem obvious, but hopefully some of them aren't. But really, a lot of businesses are requiring really quick ways to get that data back. Fast and easy ways to get that data back. And what we have are Veeam Explorers, which we have one tailor-made for Microsoft Teams, which essentially provides a very fast and, again, automated way to get that data back and really get the granularity you need. We have a variety of different send, save, and export options. Karinne's going to go into what these 40 different recovery options look like. But again, these are very fast, very easy to use, probably, and we know much faster than what you would most likely be able to achieve in your Office 365 environment natively. Fact number 8 is granular e-discovery for Teams really helps to meet legal and compliance needs very quickly. So again, we have another example of where companies really need to get that data quickly back in order to meet those legal and compliance needs. And with this version, we have now really allowed for a very broad set of search criteria to be tapped into. So whether that be categories, fields, and conditions. And again, we know that legal and compliance doesn't wait. And so we really hope that companies are taking this seriously and looking at different options for getting that data quickly into their hands so they can pass that data off to a legal or compliance officer and move on with the rest of the day. That's what this is all about, right? Us as in the IT industry, we need to quickly achieve something, get a project done or get a task done and quickly move on. So definitely speed and agility is key. You can also quickly search and find within conversations in a team. For example, if, for example, an employee is getting harassed in Teams, or maybe there's some evidence that you need to get from within a conversation, this can be easily accessed for that HR need. And Karinne's going to take it away, and we're going to take a deeper look at the diagram here of Veeam Backup for Office 365.
So I hope you at least learned something from some of those 8 facts. And if you haven't, you're probably looking at this presentation to see, okay, what's the solution? I already know I need something here. So we're going to give you a brief overview of our product, and then I'm going to do a demo in the lab. So to start off here, we have Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365 as a install where you can either do a cloud only, an on-prem, or even a hybrid type of infrastructure. So having even a hybrid infrastructure, you can send all of this data to a single data entity, meaning a single repository, whether you want to do an on-prem storage or even an object storage. We work directly with many of the main object storage providers, but if you do have any type of vendor that is S3, an on-prem S3 type of compatible storage, you're also able to leverage that. Now, one of the big differentiators with our product is we also don't require you to stay with the repository you originally chose. You can migrate the data to any repository that makes sense to your business. So, great scenario is maybe you start off backing up just Exchange. And we all know Exchange is pretty static. You can only send so big of a file through Exchange. But once you start getting into these collaborative platforms like SharePoint or OneDrive, you start to get a volatility when opening this up to end users. And you may have started out on an on-prem type of storage, but you could easily migrate over to an object storage to give you almost an infinitely expanding type of location to store your data. Now, on top of that, we have 4 different restore explorers that are tailored to each application that we want to restore the data for. And these restores aren't just back to the original location, but you can actually restore to new locations. You can save and export those files. And one of my favorite features is actually being able to send as an email attachment directly from that explorer the file that you'd like to send out to that user, which makes it really easy to satisfy any type of ticket request. And the next slide here, we can kind of expand on the types of restores that we have there. And you can see they're not just a raw data format. Best example over here on Exchange is you can export, say, as an MSG file or a PST file. And when you get over to SharePoint, you see your documents and libraries, your channels, you have your tabs. All of this data is back in a format that makes sense to the application for the data that you're restoring to. Now, let's go ahead and head over to the lab as soon as I can find the share button here. There it is. Can you see it?
It's beautiful looking.
Aw, isn't it pretty? Nice, pretty green. All right. So this is the product. If you've ever been into a Veeam product, we like to build all of our products with the same look and feel so you can go seamlessly between each of these products. Coming over, I have many jobs configured, but let's take a look at the backup infrastructure to start with. We have the scalability still here with the proxy, so you could have multiple data movers to kind of load balance across your infrastructure where you'd like to send your job to. And of course, you can have as many repositories as make sense to your business. Maybe you have your finance, HR, and help desk locally, but you have the CEOs up in Azure away from your on-prem environment, creating kind of like a split. Now, once you've decided what type of repository you'd like to use, creating a job is just as easy. You just go into the job, you'll need to name your job, select what type of scope you'd like to configure, whether it's users, groups, sites, or an individual team. You can still do your entire organization and then scope down which application you would like to back up from that organization. So you could create something that does a Teams only backup that catches every single Teams out there that you haven't already put into another job as just like a catch-all job that sends off to a local repository. You have it just in case, but it's maybe not as critical to your data sets. Now, the exclude list is just as granular, being able to do users or groups or sites. I have a group that I have set up that says no backup. Anyone that I don't want to back up or I don't want someone to mistakenly back up, I actually put it in a no backup group. And then is easy as selecting who's doing your data moving and where is that data going from any of the repositories that you would like to select from. And with the scheduling options, they're very flexible on when you'd like to do it to almost a continuously running job. If you put the SLA down to, say, 5 minutes, it's going to probably take 5 minutes more to process your data. So it'll immediately start kicking off consecutive job runs for your infrastructure. So it all depends on what you need. Now, one of my favorite things before I get into any of the Restore Explorers is to delete a file so that we can see that file getting restored back, and that will still see the same type of cache for that file. So I'll go ahead and delete that here. Make sure it's gone. Yes, I'm sure. And now let's go down the path of our explorers. Right here is our Exchange Explorer, and you're able to see all of the users and mailboxes like you would expect to see in an Exchange restore scenario. And of course, when you come over to SharePoint, you're going to see your SharePoint sites. And OneDrive for Business looks exactly like you would see within a file explorer for any type of files that you'd have under each of your documents. And of course, the Teams. Now, all of our Restore Explorers do have an advanced search function, but we're going to go ahead and use it here because we're going to pretend like we got a request for that file, and we're not 100% sure what the file was because we got a very vague ticket, and it's got the words maybe OSI in it. You're able to add in something that loose and search, and it's not just searching one site, it's searching across your entire groups of backups within the scope that you've done your restore for. And in just a couple of moments, it's reaching out to the object storage, it's coming back in saying, I have this file, it's right here. Now, you can immediately go ahead and restore that file, or you can export that file, or like I said earlier, you can email that file. But if you're curious exactly where that file was opened or created at, you can go to the view, come over, and then do any type of restore process, which is the same options you had before. And we'll do a restore. It'll ask you for the password to the account and see if I can talk and type. And it should authenticate you have the proper permissions to do a restore. If you're doing a large list of items and you're not sure exactly what's changed, what's missing, you can actually just select changed or missing here. Or if you have a document that it goes through a lot of iteration cycles, people come in and change, have versions, you could just restore the latest version of that file, which will save some restore cycles to get that file back to its original location without getting the entire slew of restored versions as well. So it's right now reaching out to an object storage because I know from my administration that this file happens to live on Azure Blob. And it's asking, okay, can you get this metadata and pull it back down, and then we're going to restore it back to Teams. And we can see right here that it was successfully restored. But of course, to complete the cycle, let's come over here and we'll have to do a refresh, of course. And you can see it's got the original modify date because we backed up all of that data for that item and making sure it comes up properly. And we got the OSI model and cats because it was a really important file we had to get back.
Yeah, super important file to get back. And we want to make sure all of our stuff is backed up, right? Absolutely. Cool. So I know we've got a little bit of time here, so I'm going to take us through a few different case studies that we have. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, so going through a few case studies, we have one which, and again, this product works with a variety of different industries. So this is actually a power and water systems utility service in Tennessee. They have 30,000 customers. They had to provide high-speed internet, television, phone services, and their worry was all about migrating from on-premises Exchange to O365. And really, we see that a lot of companies really start getting serious about backing up Office 365 the moment they have to take that migration step. And in this company's case, they really were worried about losing that data as that migration took place. So the solution essentially really enabled a much smoother migration, really gave them the control and really the peace of mind that they needed to be able to access the current and historical data that they had in their organization. And really, it did expedite for them the easy retrieval of their emails to, again, have business continuity in their organization. A customer quote here: Veeam provides a local historical backup, so email data is available 24/7, 365. Veeam provides us with peace of mind that we remain in control of our company's data, and we're covered from a legal and compliance perspective. So definitely lots of use cases in there, but it all started with that light bulb moment for them of, yes, we've got this migration coming up. We need to make sure we do not lose any data now and moving forward. The next company I have here is Drenthe College. So Drenthe College is actually located in the Netherlands, and essentially they operate with 9,000 students in 14 locations and employ nearly 1,000 faculty and staff. So the unique thing about our solution for the education sector and actually the nonprofit sector is that we do offer discounts. So we know that student licenses, are definitely offered for free for the most part from Microsoft. So we definitely look to make sure that we can discount those student licenses and make sure that those are considered protected. So again, this was a situation where the college needed to migrate to Microsoft Office 365, and they had the one concern very similar to the previous one. It's losing access to that historical data. Historical emails provide a record of conversations they've had with students and with colleagues, and historical emails document their work and their students' work. So again, if a student, or there's some issue with grading, or in some cases, that they're not quite sure what the grade was or when it was issued, all of that data is actually captured within the emails, and it essentially acts as a record of that student completing that work. So from a compliance standpoint, these emails are more than just emails, right? They serve as actual record documentations, and so definitely need to be protected. So the solution, again, protected those historical exchange data, and during the migration to Office 365, eliminates user error, security threats, some of the reasons we've talked about, retention policy gaps, and supports, in their case, because they are a European organization, supports the legal and GDPR compliance needs that they had. One other customer quote: we restored OneDrive files on 2 critical occasions, once during a security situation and once during a legal investigation. The files were easy to access from Veeam Backups. They wouldn't have been easy to access from Office 365. So definitely great quote, customer quote there. The last example I want to share here is Everest. So Everest Windows, they have been a company that's really one of those very much older companies, over 50 years in business. So although the company has evolved over the decades to offer many more different offerings, they have 1,000 employees, and they're located in the UK. The challenge for them was really they had a very diverse and dynamic infrastructure. They had applications and a sales platform dating back to the 90s. And so for them, they really needed to make sure that both the past and the present data was available, could be restored reliably, quickly, and again, so that they can keep the business up and running. So the solution for them, what Veeam Backup for Office 365 delivered, was really that optimal assurance that the company could get that data back whenever they needed to, provided that business continuity assurance, providing the business with legal, regulatory, and a good reputational position. And for them, email restorations were actually reduced from 3 hours a week to just 30 minutes. So again, if you have to meet legal and compliance needs, and you need to restore data, look for data, quickly recover that data multiple times a week, a third-party solution can definitely help that. So again, email data could be easily found by really any stakeholder across the business. And a final quote here: we were currently dedicating around 3 hours a week. With Veeam, we'd be able to reduce that to around 30 minutes, which means we can provide the service to the rest of the business much more quickly to meet any pressing deadlines, such as legal cases. So with that, we have a few call to actions that we're going to give you today. And one of them is we encourage you to read up or share the conversational Microsoft Teams backup ebook. So there's the link there. We also have the link available at our virtual booth. So come stop by. Feel free to get that secret question by either tweeting the link that we have, or by asking us a question about Veeam. And lastly, please see for yourself. We do encourage you to actually download a free trial, free for 30 days, completely unlimited functionality. And with that, we'll go ahead and take any questions here or in our virtual booth, whichever is better.
We actually have a question from Russ, which is actually one of my favorite questions to go into. Perfect. It's about eDiscovery and Compliance Center with eDiscovery. So eDiscovery is a great technology from Microsoft. There is absolutely no problem with that when it comes to legal proceedings. It's actually all meant to create a legal package in order to send when you have to go to court. But there is no real granular restore or recovery process back to original location with that metadata. So there's a lot of extra steps that have to take place. In some cases, you're not able to restore it back to the original location at all. And in other cases, it takes a lot of time originally coding APIs to try to get any sort of data back from a legal compliance hold into your environment for like an accidental deletion or something that isn't for a court case, essentially.
Yeah, and kind of tied in that is, you know, we do see that a lot of organizations sometimes rely on things like legal hold. They might think some of the retention policies actually have them covered. But what we've really tried to help users understand is that these are capabilities that are legal and compliance tools built for specific purposes. You know, these aren't backups. These don't function like backups. These don't have the recoverability like backups. Or the searchability like backups do. So again, you know, I would highly encourage, if you are using legal hold or you know, retention policies in place of a backup, I would highly recommend that you investigate the differences there, because there clearly are differences.
Is that it for the questions?
I think it might be.
That was actually a big one.
That was.
Because that's everyone's question. It's like, okay, you know, what is this versus when do you pay, when do you not pay, and this is what you get when you actually pay.
Right. And you know, Ralph, I do really love your shirt idea. You know, you're on mute, and on the back, can you please go on mute? I think we need those shirts for next year.
Oh yes, we absolutely. There's going to be a shirt that says you're on mute. Then you turn back, and then it says no, get back on mute. we always have that schizophrenic case with Teams, Zoom, you name it. We're always in that situation.
Absolutely.
All right. Hey, that was wonderful. And by the way, you were live streamed onto our YouTube channel, so everyone was so happy. And the kitty, well, the kitty went. Show the kitty. Hold on, we're gonna focus on the kitty.
Here.
Oh, the kitty disappeared. No.
She's here.
She's famous. Right. She's in every video.
Yeah, she's famous.
Okay, well, she's on YouTube again, so clearly YouTube has this thing about cats. No problem. All right, before we see more of the cat, we could, but we're going to have our next speaker. Thank you so much, folks. We have our next presentation coming on. Please come back again. We'll see you. Thanks for hosting us again, or rather sponsoring us again.
Will do.